Good morning. A few days ago, I did a video on how transits during the upcoming lunar month, from about the new moon on November 13th through about the next new moon on December 12th, will affect the world in general. Is about a 45-minute video, and I talked about a lot of contentious things going on astrologically, which could have an impact on the war between Israel and Hamas and other conflicts around the world. But now I want to do what will hopefully be a shorter video on how the upcoming lunar month may impact things in America. So let me see if I can share my screen. This will probably be shorter than my previous video, but remember the things I talk about in that previous video. They affect everyone in the world. So it's good to watch that because that forms sort of the backdrop against where how things are working out for particular countries. Okay, give me a second here to get things set up so I can see what I'm doing. Just about ready. Okay, and I think we're ready to go. So this is the lunar month for America, November 13th, 2023 through December 12th, 2023. And I want to talk a little bit first about just some of the general transits. I'm only going to be looking at conjunctions, squares, and oppositions. Those are the things which bring about the most tension or stress. So let's look at these for the entire month of November and December. And one thing we have growing or waxing in strength is this opposition from transiting Chiron to Saturn. Uh, Chiron is this drive towards transcendence, but in the process, before we can transcend, go beyond the visible reality, uh, this hard shell that we've created about what's real and what's not real, that often has to be cracked first. As a result, for many people, Chiron will cause wounding, which then has to be followed by healing and finally by transcendence. So, whenever Chiron is affecting uh, the world or a country, the majority of the people will experience wounding. A smaller percentage healing, and a very small fraction will rise to the occasion and go on immediately to transcendence. And now Chiron is getting closer and closer to an opposition to Saturn. This opposition won't become exact, but it gets within uh, a degree of exact, at least. My orb here for these bars is 2 degrees, so we're under the influence of it. We had an exact opposition already, I think, in April of 2023, March or April, one of those. And during that time, there were uh, a lot of infrastructure problems, some bank failures, mass shootings, things like that going on. So when Chiron comes into opposition with Saturn uh, in the chart for America that I use, we usually have to pay back some karma. We have to address our past actions one way or another. I should point out that the chart that I use for America, unfortunately, I did not include that in this presentation, but the chart I generally use for America is a July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Resolution for Independence. But what I'm saying is going to apply pretty much to all of the various July 1776 charts that many astrologers use for America. The only difference in the July 2nd chart is going to be the position of the moon, but everything else is going to be about the same. So as Chiron gets closer to opposition with Saturn, we're going to have to pay the price for various past actions of our country. That's when the bill comes due. The karmic debts need to be paid off. Now, we also have the transing lunar nodes making squares to the moon and Mercury, both the north node and also the south node. That is just intensifying, creating a sense of intensity about things. That is going to be pretty prevalent throughout November, starts to fade in December. Now, one of the big things which has been affecting America for the entire fall has been uh, a near conjunction of transiting Pluto with natal Pluto. We've already experienced three exact conjunctions, and during these exact conjunctions, America has each time experienced a crisis, a threat to its democracy, either from without or from within. The first exact conjunction occurred right after Russia invaded Ukraine. And uh, that was a threat not only to Ukraine, but if Russia absorbs Ukraine, we know it plans to try and absorb other countries. Some of them are NATO countries, and that could draw America into a direct uh, confrontation or war with Russia. So that's a big threat. Internally, the threat has been the aftermath of the January 6th insurrection. And that has been an issue during the other times that Pluto has come in, transing Pluto has come into conjunction with natal Pluto. Okay, now December 6th, a couple of important things are happening on December 6th. Transiting Jupiter will square the natal lunar nodal axis, and transiting Mars will be in opposition to Uranus. This could be a few days that could be unsettling for America, one way or another. And with Mars in opposition to Uranus, there could be more violence of some sort or more angry political actions or political discourse. This kind of stirs up seeds of revolution. And Jupiter squaring the lunar nodal axis that can intensify things since Jupiter is in Taurus, which has a lot to do with our financial well-being. There could be some financial issues that come up. And later in December, we'll have transiting Mars in opposition to natal Mars, followed by a square from transiting Mars to natal Neptune. This also tends to stir up violence in the country and violence between people with different ideologies or political points of views. And then toward the very end of December, the transiting true north node will be conjunct Chiron in all the various July 1776 charts for America. This conjunction will become exact in January of next year. That could intensify whatever wounding Chiron tends to bring about. So this can be a very active period. All fall, we've been going through another period of rebelliousness in this country. When transing Pluto comes into conjunction with natal Pluto, we tend to see rebelliousness among some factions within the country. And let's see, the last time this was exact, we saw that big fight in the House of Representatives over who would be Speaker. And this fall, when we've had the near conjunction, same fight, same issue. And so we have rebelliousness within House of Representatives, rebelliousness from Trump's followers, and so it's not a calm time. But after November, that uh, conjunction between transiting Pluto and natal Pluto, it's going to be fading more and more, and that's good for us. Okay. Now, I have also circled when certain midpoints will be activated, and these can be turning points of sorts, breaking points, if you will. And this is when certain events can happen because the stress uh, just gets too much. Now, I'm not going to predict any particular events, but the dates are important here. And if we look at planets involved, one of the things is we see Chiron is going to be involved in 4 out of 5 of these midpoint activations. And so these could be times when there could be wounding of sorts. Uh, if the moon's involved, it could be wounding to the American people in some form or fashion. Doesn't have to be physical, could be economic or in other ways. Uh, with Pluto involved, that can be a little bit more intense, involve rebellion, powerful energies. Jupiter involvement tends to magnify things. Uh, this may be related. This is all coming up very quickly. This could be related to uh, protests and divisions we're seeing currently on a lot of political issues and on what we think of world events going on in either Ukraine or the Middle East, for example. Uh, when Saturn is involved in midpoint, this one will be exact on the 28th. This is the midpoint between transiting Saturn and Mercury. Um, I'm sorry, this will be transiting Saturn in opposition to the midpoint between natal Mercury and ascendant. And Saturn tends to cause restriction, barriers. So people in the country may not be feeling too happy, particularly economically at this point. And let's see, we have Chiron. It's not going to make an exact conjunction to the uh, Moon Jupiter midpoint, but that is getting stronger as we get closer to the end of the year. And with Moon and Jupiter involved, this could affect the people directly, some sort of hardship or wounding. On the 11th, we have Uranus conjunct the Mars Chiron midpoint. This is something in particular to keep an eye on because Mars can be very aggressive, even warlike, violence, Chiron, wounding, Uranus, unexpected, surprising events. So these are all sort of breaking points, if you will, when whatever tension is out there can break in certain ways, and then events could happen. It's also possible that we pass through these points without things may get tense without breaking, and so nothing serious might happen. Nonetheless, these are just some dates to keep an eye on to see what is going on in the country at these times. Okay, now what I want to do, I've got about 4 charts I want to look at. I'm looking at the charts for the new moon beginning on November 13th, and then we'll look at a chart for the first quarter moon, the full moon, and the third quarter moon. Those phases of the moon are times of particular stress, and there are even statistical studies that have been done that are available at the US government's PubMed website, which show that statistically there are certain things which are more likely to happen at these particular phases of the moon, more accidents, more uh, deaths from this or that. Uh, so there is statistical evidence out there that confirms that the new moon, the quarter moons, and the full moon are times of stress. And by looking at how America will be affected by transits at these times, we can get a fairly coherent, consistent story of what the lunar month will be like for America. So, starting out, the number one thing we have transiting Chiron opposite natal Saturn. I've already talked about that a bit. We usually get this usually digs up some past karma, and we have to face some of our past actions which have wounded us, and we either let those issues continue to wound us, or we correct things in some way. And this aspect is going to be prominent and increasing in strength throughout the entire lunar month. Next, we have the transiting lunar nodal axis making a square to natal Mercury and Moon. Now, if you're using another July 1776 chart for America, the Moon will be in a different place. But if you're using this one, the lunar nodes will be scoring both Moon and Mercury, and in pretty much all the July 1776 charts, the lunar nodes will be experiencing Mercury. So you're going to get some of the same regardless. Uh, the lunar nodes tend to intensify things. It's sort of this intense, uncontrollable energy. And right now, this is affecting how people feel in this chart. And it's affecting economic matters too, commerce. So, in general, throughout the month, people are going to continue to feel some stress and strain. And this aspect also continues throughout the month. And transiting Pluto, conjunct natal Pluto, again, we've talked about that. The good thing is that Pluto is moving direct now. So this conjunction, we did not get an exact conjunction this time, but a near conjunction. But nonetheless, its intensity is starting to wane. It's still pretty close to an exact conjunction, and this is causing rebelliousness in America that we're seeing politically, uh, not only in Congress, particularly the House of Representatives, but also we've seen an uptick in rebelliousness between hardcore Republicans, MAGA Republicans, as they're called out in the world, and Democrats and moderate Republicans. Uh, with the situation in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, we're also seeing strong protests on both sides, both pro-Palestinian and pro-Jewish, anti-Jewish, anti-Palestinian. There's a lot of unrest in America going on, and it's going to be pretty strong for the rest of November. It will probably begin to noticeably decrease in December. Now, what I've just talked about, this pretty much endures for the entire lunar month. So we can go through the remaining slides pretty quickly. By the time we get to the first quarter moon at November 20th, we have these things I've talked about, transiting Chiron, transiting lunar nodes, transiting Pluto. We also will now have transiting Jupiter square the natal lunar nodal axis. So we need to keep an eye on this. This, again, anytime the lunar nodes are involved, intensifies things. Since Jupiter is in Taurus, and Taurus is often related to financial matters, um, We have to see what happens, if it's going to be good or bad. If we're lucky, the stock market could just take all this intensity and skyrocket, but it's equally likely there could be some problems. Jupiter magnifies things, and so the intensity will be magnified for better or worse. Now, I also should mention that, uh, let's see, it's not making direct aspects to America's chart, but if you look down here, uh, Sun and Mars, they're both at 27 degrees Scorpio. The minutes are different, but they're an exact conjunction by degree. And a few days earlier, I think on November 17th, they were in exact conjunction down to the minute and beyond. So the general transits, America's has its own tensions going on right now. Uh, but this is going to be a very intense time for the world in general, a time when aggressive tendencies and warlike tendencies are gaining uh, an ascendance. And so this will also affect America, even though these two planets are not making a direct impact by transit on America's chart. And I noticed this conjunction is exact on the 17th. That is also when the government is supposed to run out of money. And so once again, we're faced with this possibility of defaulting on the debt. Once again, that is a real distinct possibility, but we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out. Now, by the time we arrive at the full moon, it's the same aspects uh, that are in effect. We're even closer to an opposition of transing Chiron with natal Saturn. So we're having to pay some sort of karmic debt at this time, where there are going to be some sort of past actions or decisions we're going to have to address, whether it's things long ago, like slavery, or maybe things more recent. Uh, Saturn tends to be more conservative. And so, for one possibility, is the conservative hardliners may be digging in, and Chiron may need to crack their shell with some sort of wounding to the country. Uh, there's also a possibility that everyone will take the high road, will wonderfully transcend to a better place. It's possible, doesn't seem very likely. Uh, Down here, the Sun and Mars, by the way, they're still in conjunction, only about 2 degrees of separation between them. But they've moved on into the sign of Sagittarius. That is better for the world and general in America also, because in Scorpio, Saturn conjunct Mars is more likely to be militaristic, more aggressive. In Sagittarius, Sagittarius represents kind of the group mind. Uh, this favors negotiations and talking more, particularly with Moon and Gemini. Gemini also likes to talk. So whether we're talking about world problems or domestic problems, uh, even though all the major tensions are the same, there's more likely to be discussion on them at this point. And that can lead to compromise, which can be good for everyone. Okay, when we get to the third quarter moon, again, the same uh, aspects are applying. Same aspects from Chiron, the lunar nodal axis, transiting Pluto, and transiting Jupiter. So there's going to be a very consistent theme throughout this month. Uh, there's going to be in feelings of intensity in America. Uh, we'll have to keep an eye on how things shift economically. Uh, there is more and more wounding America will probably experience throughout the month in one way or another, either politically or economically or whatever, but something related to our past actions, most likely. And there is a feeling of rebelliousness in America right now. Groups are of various sorts are now pitted against one another, where it's Republicans versus Democrats, pro-Palestinian versus pro-Israeli factions, anti-Semitism, other hate forms of hate, as you may know, are on the rise in America right now. And that's all related to all of these aspects that are going on that are creating tension. Uh, so to recapitulate for this next lunar month, we have a near conjunction of transing Pluto to natal Pluto throughout the fall that has increased rebellion in Washington, D.C. and America in general. This has resulted in a prolonged battle once again for Speaker of the House and a resurgence of far-right conservative doctrine. Also, more hate, more anti-Semitism. Uh, Transits from Chiron to natal Saturn and natal Chiron. Uh, Transits involving natal, that's right, transits from Chiron to natal Saturn and natal Chiron. These two planets are in opposition in the natal chart, are causing ongoing wounding to America. This has tended to manifest in America as political chaos, mass shootings, and damage from climate change. However, some in government and throughout America will respond to the true nature of Chiron, which is to transcend the chaos and ascend to a higher level. Hopefully, more of us, rather than fewer of us, do that. Uh, this is also contributing to hate and anti-Semitism. And then squares involving both the natal lunar nodes and the transing lunar nodes are intensifying all the current situations in America. Now, if we take a quick look ahead for the years from 2024 through 2028, unfortunately, America's got a lot of tensions and stresses ahead. In 2024, early on, we'll have a square between Saturn and Uranus. Fortunately, we have just one, but that tends to create frustration, rebellion. We will have three Chiron returns in 2024, 2025. Transing Chiron will be conjunct natal Chiron. That tends to coincide with wounding of political figures, political wounding in America. It also causes some to transcend, and it brings abortion to the forefront as an issue. Uh, these Chiron conjunctions happened back in the early 70s, and the political wounding we saw back then was from Watergate. Uh, President Nixon had to resign. Vice President Agnew had to resign over separate issues involving his corruption. We saw the transcendent aspect of Chiron present and how the Senate Select Committee to investigate Watergate responded and did its job and spoke so eloquently about the crisis. And then it was in 1973 when these aspects from Chiron were active that Roe v. Wade became law of the land, and women were given the right to control uh, their own bodies. This time around, the political situations have been the January 6th insurrection and crimes, indictments of Donald Trump. And we saw Congress rise to the occasion again with the eloquent work of the January 6th committee. And Roe v. Wade was back in the news. The Supreme Court, the very conservative court, went back and took away the right of women to have control over their own bodies. So we'll experience more of that probably in 2024, more news involving Trump in 2024, early 2025 is quite likely based upon past experience. Climate change will also probably be in the news and maybe even mass shootings. Uh, Throughout much of 2025 and into 2026, we have all of these aspects which occur and repeat themselves as planets transit and then turn direct. So we're going to have several exact squares between Neptune and Venus. Venus rules the right brain. It's the pleasure principle. And our right brain, our nonverbal brain, forms a map of what we like and what we don't like, what gives us pleasure, what doesn't. That creates a sense of what's good, what's not good. Neptune is going to be confusing all of that. There could be a lot of misinformation or passionate feelings about things. Uh, let's see, Neptune will be in Aries when these squares become exact, and that people could react more aggressively based upon uh, whatever vision is in their head, whether it's a true vision or a false vision. We'll also have 3 times that transiting Chiron squares both Mercury and the moon, and that could cause more wounding for the country. When Saturn squares Venus, that will happen 3 times, and that's going to cause more feelings of frustration. And all of these are going to happen around the same times in 2025, 2026. So we don't know exactly what will happen, but it probably will not be fun. Uh, in 2026, 2027, let's see, we have a slew of transits from Saturn and Chiron. Chiron square Pluto, that's going to happen 3 times. That is particularly worrisome because Chiron often manifests as wounding. Pluto is great power. This could represent the head of the country, the president, or other leaders. It could represent powerful uh, energies which cause America to be wounded or which cause America to wound others. Sometimes when Chiron is in effect, it's other people that we wind up wounding. And so, again, all of this is not going to be fun. And we also have a couple of times that transiting Saturn will be in opposition to natal Saturn. So these are going to be periods of frustration, restriction for the country. When Neptune squares Jupiter in 2027, 2028, uh, that's kind of a tension between vision and growth. This could lead to some unrealistic ideas or misinformation that could be driving things. So we'll just have to wait until we're closer to this point to see what is most likely to happen. Uh, just as Chiron up here was squaring Mercury and then the moon, we're going to have Saturn uh, squaring Mercury and then the moon. Saturn will be in Aries at this point, and these are probably going to be moments of frustration or restriction for the country. When Saturn squares Pluto, again, that is also more worrisome. Uh, and this could be some breaking down of infrastructure, nuclear power plants, all sorts of things involving both power and frustration. The first square, it looks like it's going to last for several months, so that's going to make things more intense. Uranus, transiting Uranus, conjunct natal Uranus. That is also worrisome because in the past, whenever these conjunctions have happened, we've been at war, uh, either at home or abroad. Obviously, the first time Uranus was at this position was during the uh, American Revolution. Then, when we had transiting Uranus conjunct natal Uranus, again, that first Uranus return that occurred during the Civil War. The most, let's see, well, this is, I'm sorry, this is coming up. This is not in the past, but we had Uranus about 8 degrees Gemini during the American Civil War. When transing Uranus hit that position again, I'm sorry, American Revolution. When it hit that position again, it was that first Uranus return, it was the American Civil War. During the second Uranus return, uh, we got involved in World War II. So if we don't play our cards right, we could find ourselves at war again at home or abroad. The fact that we have three of these Uranus returns makes the whole thing more serious. And then Pluto will be conjunct the South Node, lunar node, in opposition to the North lunar node. I know there are some astrologers very worried about that. They've looked more at the history of that than I have, but this also tends to intensify the likelihood of cataclysmic events, apparently, for a country. And this is going to be pretty strong, it looks like, either exact in late 2027 or early 2028, but pretty strong throughout a lot of that year. Okay, well, that is it for America for the lunar month and taking a sneak peek ahead. So let me stop sharing. So it looks like for this coming lunar month in America, a lot of the problems we have are problems that we're still seeing now. So those are just basically going to continue for the next month. And if you go back and look at specific dates for some of those transits and for some of those midpoints, those are dates you want to keep an eye on to see what in particular might happen on those dates. But in general, a lot of the tensions we're feeling now, a lot of the rebelliousness in the country, a lot of wounding of various sorts from various directions, uh, those things are going to continue. Uh, in general, our remedy is, as I always say, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, give whatever little you can afford to charity on a regular basis so that you can help all people out. Uh, those are the things which can help make the world better. If you're feeling stressed, I suggest you do like I do. Listen to some good and joyous classical music every day for a few hours each day. I listen to recordings by Tchaikovsky and Beethoven, and also Debussy, Rimsky-Korsakov, Smetana, others. But listening to uh, good and joyous classical music, I've realized it has a very healing effect on the brain. All of this, all sensory input programs us in various ways. And when we take magnificent auditory sound into the brain, it helps the brain heal. It helps the brain balance itself and stabilize. So if you're very stressed now, that's one of the easiest things I can recommend that you do. Either listen to a lot of good classical music on your iPhone, or use an app on your television, turn to the classical music station, and listen to sounds that feed the brain in a good way and help it heal. So, again, be kind to yourself and others, give to charity, heal your brain. And so for now, I'll just say so long and be well. I hope you enjoy me again for more uh, forecasts of the astrological weather. And also remember, astrology doesn't make things automatically happen, it just creates the weather. What actually happens depends upon our decisions. So always take the high road. Always make the decision that will help the best and not those decisions that hurt people. So, with that, again, I say so long and be well.